All right, big news coming in. Prime Minister Narendra Modi all set to leave now for Russia for the BRICS summit. Remember, this is going to be about full-on double diplomacy because Prime Minister Modi, when he'll be in Russia, the interesting bit will be if there is going to be a certain bilateral between specifically Prime Minister Modi and Xi Jinping, if that's going to happen on this. But this is going to be important. Remember, BRICS is very crucial, specifically at a time when we see the kind of geopolitical situations across the world and the ongoing wars as well. The kind of trade deals that are going to be discussed will be important. So that's the big news coming in, that the big BRICS summit that's coming up. This is the 16th BRICS summit that is being held in Russia. And remember, on agenda will be specifically one, as he's set to leave, that this will be the first summit of the group following the expansion last year. So while India views BRICS as crucial for global multipolarity addressing global challenges, the Foreign Secretary said that the grouping also serves as a vital platform. There are global challenges right now to ensure that there is a more fair international order, specifically when it comes to superpowers, global powers, and that is where perhaps India's role is going to play a big part. So we're going to focus primarily on what the BRICS summit is going to be about. I want to immediately go across to Geeta Mohan, our Foreign Affairs Editor, joining us. Geeta, do you think this time, this BRICS summit is going to be as much about the big Western powers that are seen as superpowers compared to now also Russia and India gaining prominence on these issues?
Well, it is a very important grouping. Yes, like you rightly said, that it is a grouping that is seen as maybe a counter to the West, but we have from 5 countries now, because there are 10 countries here, 2 very important ones that are involved in conflict and war directly. And so there will be a lot of conversations on that front. But yes, it has become a very important grouping. India's position in this grouping is very strong, and they hold very closely to, they pay very close attention to what India really has to say. We're looking at Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, the first 5, and then the newest members. It will be the first BRICS meeting with Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, and the United Arab Emirates. So Russia and Iran in the room, the 2 big conflicts that are underway, are certainly going to be points of conversation. And yes, it is going to be a grouping that is going to discuss the problems that they face from the West, the problems that they see in the United States of America. Not the only country, but yes, one of those rare countries that has very good ties with both sides is India. So yes, India's position, not just in the BRICS, the SCO, as also in multilaterals that are West-oriented, such as Quad, is much in fact growing.
Keep tracking all the latest on that. So this is going to be a big meeting. Remember, this BRICS summit, and all eyes will be not only on the summit but on Russia specifically and India, because in the 16th BRICS summit that will be in Kazan will be Russia playing the hosts. The meeting comes amid already a war that's ongoing between Russia and Ukraine, and it's been almost 20 months now. But as the worsening conflict in the Middle East as well, can that have an impact on this? Now, the suspense primarily will be on Prime Minister Modi and Xi Jinping's bilateral meeting, if that happens. Talks could be on the cards after India and China have agreed on petrol arrangements. Remember, barely a few hours ago, along the line of actual control in eastern Ladakh. Amid all of this, Putin has expressed appreciation for Prime Minister Modi, and that is Prime Minister Modi's concern regarding the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Putin continues to acknowledge that Prime Minister Modi is a friend, expressing gratitude for India's support in seeking a peaceful resolution in the war.
Ambassador, what do we expect from the Prime Minister's visit? What's top on his agenda?
Prime Minister's visit is taking place for participation in the 16th BRICS summit, and there are a number of issues that BRICS is handling today. Economic development, furthering economic cooperation between the member states, cooperation for reforming the global institutions, including the Security Council, giving greater voice to the global South, handling climate change. These are some of the most prominent issues that the leaders are expected to discuss during the summit.
As far as India and Russia are concerned, the Prime Minister was here in July and then he subsequently traveled to Ukraine. He's met both the presidents. Is there some forward movement or likely forward movement on exploring a roadmap for peace in the region?
The issue has been discussed and spoken about. As you know, India has consistently held the view that the concerned parties need to engage and find a resolution to this conflict by dialogue and diplomacy. So I cannot prejudge what the leaders will talk, but I won't be surprised if this issue is also discussed.
The Chinese side is wanting to restore the relationship between India and China to what it was earlier. It wants the other aspects of the relationship like trade, commerce, investment to move ahead. It will, of course, take some time to restore the trust between the two countries, but at least I think a beginning can be made, and perhaps there might be a meeting at the topmost level between the Prime Minister of India, Mr. Modi, and the President of China, Mr. Xi Jinping, at Kazan in Russia. Now that the problems on the border along the LAC have been sorted out, I think there is a very high probability that our Prime Minister Modi, and the President of China, Xi Jinping, could have a bilateral meeting in Kazan.
Right, India Today's managing editor Gaurav Sawant is in Kazan right now in Russia, and he gets us these exclusive summit. Gaurav, thank you for joining us at this point. It's the big meeting today between Prime Minister Modi and Putin. But amid the war, what kind of highlights do you think we're expecting? Over to you.
It's a very crucial day here at Kazan, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi's meeting with the Russian President Vladimir Putin becomes extremely interesting and newsworthy. Remember, the Prime Minister had met the Russian President when he came here for a bilateral in July. They'd had a 5-hour-long meeting during that bilateral on the 8th of July. Subsequently, the Prime Minister had traveled to Ukraine, had a very long meeting with the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, and now is back here. So there are multiple ideas, we are told, that the two have discussed, and based on those ideas, there is likely to be forward movement on the peace plan between Russia and Ukraine. Of course, India has constantly said India is in favor of any conflict resolution through dialogue and diplomacy, because no solution will be found in the battlefield. It leads to a lot of loss of life and money. The effort should be to find a solution through dialogue and diplomacy. That is something where the two sides are likely to move forward, with India offering a helping hand as long as it's required by both sides. That's point one. Point two, remember, Prime Minister Narendra Modi had also raised the issue of some Indians who'd been misled into fighting for the Russian army in Ukraine. Now, I'm told that 90 Indians have been since sent back. Some, of course, unfortunately had lost their lives. Their mortal remains are being repatriated, and the effort is on for the remaining 17. Approximately 17 is the number that India's ambassador to Russia, Ambassador Vinay Kumar, put it when I spoke to him, that 17 more are likely to be repatriated. As and when more information comes in, India takes it up with Russia, and with the personal intervention of Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Russian President Vladimir Putin, Indians are being sent back, those who were fighting as mercenaries or had been misled into fighting Russia's conflict with Ukraine. On the field, you know, in the areas of science, technology, defense cooperation, people to people, students, cultural exchanges, it's a very wide arena, business to business, Indian hospitals here in Russia. There are so many areas where the two countries are collaborating and cooperating and having conversations about how to expand that relationship. That's also something that the two leaders will review.
Gaurav, please stay on with me, because I'm getting these live visuals. So that's Prime Minister Narendra Modi departing for the BRICS summit for Kazan, Russia. And we'll be tracking in the next few hours how this journey is going to proceed. But remember, this is going to be very important, because usually it's the Western policymakers who tend to decide how the world is run. But is that changing, and is BRICS a part of that? So Prime Minister Modi there in a crisp white attire, kurta, and the striped jacket this time. A slight difference from the usual attire that we have seen, specifically the kind of jackets Prime Minister Modi has worn. So this time opting for a striped jacket, which is also now called the Modi jacket, heading to Kazan, Russia for it. And Prime Minister Modi's friendship, remember, with Vladimir Putin has been significant. Putin has also acknowledged it. But during the war, many had said, because India has been a friend for both Russia and Ukraine, sharing a historical, cultural, and in many ways also a people-to-people connect. Can it act as a mediator? Can it help stop the war? This is where Prime Minister Modi had said, this is not an era for war. And as he departs, the focus will now be about these rising powers, stable economies, and with Russia, and despite the war, Russia's prominence in the global order, India's rising stature, and so is China as much. And are these parties and these sides deciding how the new global order is going to become? So, Geeta Mohan also joining me on this. Geeta, Prime Minister Modi departing, possibly when is he likely to be landing in Kazan? And what is immediately first on agenda, on highlight with regard to the program?
Well, the first and the foremost highlight of his visit to Russia would be his bilateral meeting with President Putin. He is scheduled to arrive in Kazan in Russia at around 10:25 a.m. Because they're behind time, so it'll still be morning there. And then he arrives at his hotel at around 11 o'clock. Of course, there is going to be some from the Indian community who will surely be there, Pooja, like we always see, to welcome him. And then around 1 o'clock is the very big India-Russia bilateral. Not the first one since the war, because we saw Prime Minister Modi go to Russia for a bilateral visit and meeting with Vladimir Putin. But now it is going to be a Modi-Putin meeting again. So the entire visit to Kazan, where he'll be there for the BRICS, begins with sideline meetings, beginning with Russia. And then there are two other bilateral meetings which have not been confirmed, but you have the UAE, you have Iran in the room. And of course, the big bilateral between India and China, is that really going to happen or not? There was a lot of speculation after the news that came of, and the Foreign Secretary of India, Secretary Vikram Misri, confirming that this disengagement between India and China at LAC is done, and that there is going to be restarting of patrolling between the two sides, as was done pre-2020. So we are looking at maybe a bilateral between the leaders of China and India as well, which has not happened in a very, very long time. So again, a very important bilateral should that happen. But then we also have the UAE, again, a very important friend and partner of India, and very close to Prime Minister Modi, the leaders of...
Tell me this, Geeta, how do the Western powers usually view the BRICS? Brazil, Russia, India, China, no USA, no United Kingdom, not really the Western allies, so to say. So how is that seen? Because I also understand that these countries, part of the BRICS, are also trying to push that they are as important in world order.
Yeah, then when you see the SCO, the West is more... looks at SCO more as a counter than the BRICS. BRICS certainly had begun as a grouping of the developing world, yes, but the fact that it has Russia, China, and India, and initially it was the RIC, and RIC format still exists, Pooja. So looking at the countries that are there in this bloc, yes, the West does monitor the grouping very closely, but it has expanded. It is no longer just Russia and China in the room. We're looking at 10 countries, which include India as well, and that makes it a very significant and important grouping. And because it also has Iran now, so yes, there are going to be a lot of conversations, and the West is going to look at what the BRICS really says and decides. And the joint communique, what does it say about the war?
Geeta, then I just have an added question. As we look at these visuals of Prime Minister Modi departing for Kazan in Russia, that this expansion that we have seen, more and more members that are coming in, specifically with regard to the Middle East region. And, you know, what started from Egypt and now then it's adding on to other countries. I do find it interesting that this is as much a global South alliance, an Asian alliance, a Middle Eastern alliance that's happening.
Well, that's true. The fact that the grouping is also dynamic. They're looking at how to keep themselves alive and how to have more members who would want to be part of this grouping. We're looking at kind of a global South in many aspects and respects, and many other countries would want to join this forum because, well, this is primarily an economic forum, geostrategic economic forum, Pooja, where you're looking at aspects that are actually moving forward and working. Various other countries, various other forums and multilaterals speak about it, but BRICS has done it. We have a BRICS bank. They're actually speaking about BRICS currency and how to exchange money within the grouping in local currency as well. These things will make life much easier for the countries here at play, one. And secondly, in a way, for China, for Russia, for Iran, this actually speaks of de-dollarization, that you do not really need to trade in dollars alone. And they are seeing forward movement on that economic front. So, yes, there are not just these 5 countries that have joined. There are many others who have expressed their intention or their intent to really be a part of the BRICS. And we're looking at from 5 an expansion to 10 and maybe furthermore.
Geeta, thank you very much for now. I'll come back to you in just a short while. So these are the big highlights. Remember, with possibly the kind of expansion that we are seeing, Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, UAE, and then, of course, apart from the already existing BRICS nations, it's going to be interesting what this alliance becomes. And Gaurav, also, I'll come back to you in just a short while, because the focus, remember, is going to be trade and technology. So take a look at this report. What can you expect, and why is BRICS summit in Russia so important?
As the world turns its attention to the upcoming BRICS summit in Russia, all eyes are on India and Prime Minister Narendra Modi. With key bilateral meetings on the agenda, significant focus will be on Modi's potential discussions with Chinese President Xi Jinping on the heels of a breakthrough along the LAC. Both India and China stand to gain from enhanced ties, especially in trade and technology. As the BRICS summit approaches, experts are looking to Prime Minister Modi to play mediator in the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict.
The war in Ukraine is frozen. There are very few parties who have the credibility to talk to both sides. I would argue there are really only 2 leaders worldwide, Erdogan of Turkey and Modi in India. So if Prime Minister Modi were to propose some kind of situation where he acts as an intermediary and conveys messages from the Russians to the Ukrainians and vice versa, I think he could play a very constructive role, and I think it would be useful to do it. It would raise India's profile.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has acknowledged India's role in advocating for peaceful negotiations. India's position as a non-aligned power allows it to maintain cordial relations with both Russia and Western nations, making it the ideal pick for mediating this conflict. With the expansion of BRICS, India aims to solidify its status as a pivotal player in global politics. This summit marks a critical juncture for India as it positions itself as a bridge between diverse global interests. Bureau Report, India Today.